Hello and welcome to the pod. I'm Nathan Fink.
I'm Jasmine Torres Allen, and this is New Hampshire Family Now,
a show about building family in the Granite State. Today in the podcast, Jasmine and I talk resilience and the small but significant ways we build it, and later Family Resource Center leaders Ardis, Yahna, and Gabrielle Flanders join us to discuss the 2024 Ride for Resilience and how access to family supports makes for a stronger community. Today's show was brought to you by Service Credit Union. You go beyond for your family. That's why Service Credit Union goes beyond for you. Get more for your money, reach milestones sooner, and plan for the future you've earned. Service Credit Union will support you every step of the way to go further than you ever imagined. If you're driven to go beyond, you belong with Service Credit Union. Visit servicecu.org to start your journey today. This podcast was also brought to you by Family Support New Hampshire. Family Support New Hampshire is NH's coalition of family resource centers and family strengthening programs that exist to ensure Granite State families have access to resources so both caregivers and children can succeed, because supported families are strong families. To find a family resource center near you, visit www.fsnh.org. Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm Nathan Fink.
I'm Jasmine.
We have a great show for you today, including interviews with two fantastic Family Resource Center leaders, both of whom are on this year's Ride for Resilience route. But first, there's a hint of fall in the air.
It smells amazing. A little crisp. I don't know.
It does smell crisp. These days remind me, though, that I got to get back out there because the Ride for Resilience is coming and 100 miles is no joke.
Oh, my God. I don't know how you do it every time.
I guess the thing that I remember the most about it is just how much connection there was getting through it. You know what I mean?
What would you say was the hardest part, though? Like physically? Because I can't imagine you're like huffing and puffing and you're like, oh my God, how am I going to get to the next stop?
Well, when you think about it physically, so halfway through everything shut down. Like literally my quads, my calves, my hamstrings, everything started to cramp. And I was thinking about it because halfway through we stopped at this, rest stop or whatever. And my riding partner, Laura Hagley, who, again, I say this every time, she saved me. She was like, when was the last time you ate? When was the last time you drank something? You see? And she's
those are very, very good questions to ask.
They were. And so I was running quite literally on empty. And then my body was like, we can't do this.
Right.
And the thing, though, that I keep thinking about that fundamentally, I think, changes the way I reflect on resilience is I used to think resilience was all about powering through. But what happens when there is no power? That's when resilience is resilience, because it's a very privileged thing to always have more access to power, to always have more access to resources.
Exactly.
But without that, I had this moment of I don't know where to go. And then all of a sudden when I had that, I was surrounded by people who said, let me show you.
And they ask the right questions. And sometimes you don't even know what questions to ask. Right? Like you're so in the thick of like, I got to get to the next place. I got to get there. I got to get there. I got to get there. And you forget to even ask those questions, or you just don't know. But
I really do fundamentally think the more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious about you, because this, the ride is a very physical demonstration of resilience.
Absolutely. And we always talk about how community starts in the home first all the time. And so when I think about resilience, I think about when my kids are fighting. And so, I think about all the tools I might have armed them with when they're in conflict, right? And so when they're fighting and they're kind of at it, I kind of let them fight. Sometimes I let them figure it out because, that kind of builds a little bit of that problem solving, right? In conflict. And I also like to listen in and see if they've used any of the tools I've, maybe taught them or mirrored for them in the midst of conflict. And sometimes I'll catch them using things that I've said out loud or things my husband has said out loud and or things that they've heard amongst their peers. Right. And I like to hear how they work through that conflict and become more resilient in the way of communicating with each other. That's really smart. Yeah. I mean, I have to do that because I get in there. I get in between. And that's a problem. And it's so easy to do that because your default mode is, well, I got to solve their problem. You know what I mean? Like that way they stop screaming and they're stopping fighting. But sometimes letting them work it out between each other, it builds resilience on its own. Well, they can't possibly build it without
using it, without drawing from it, right?
Or having any sort of maybe background in conflict resolution.
But to even get to that point of helping a child build resilience, you actually have to be pretty in touch with your own with regards to our roles, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And before this, I think you were using a couple 4-letter words that didn't make the podcast about summer coming to an end.
Yeah, and how we're counting the days down.
Yes. So how do you do that, though? How do you then work on your own resilience in this particular mindset so that you can then help them build it?
You know, I take a lot of breaks. I used to not take breaks. I used to be like, no, I got to power through. No, I got to power through. But it was actually the parents group that I'm a part of that like other moms, I saw them take breaks, you know? And so that kind of, it gave me an example of, well, it's okay for me to take a break, you know, and to establish time in my schedule to take breaks.
Yeah. So what does a break look like?
It could be anything from being able to sit quietly and read my book while, the kids go to the park with my husband, or, maybe it's alone time in the kitchen and I'm cooking and I'm not having to focus in on what's going on in the living room. You know what I mean? Those are little moments where I carve out for a little break.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Even if it's like 15, 20 minutes of just quiet, then it allows me to come back, a little bit more recalibrated.
Is there an example in your life of something that you didn't know if you'd make it through it?
Oh, man. Lots of moments, I guess. I would say there was one time, and it's probably hard to hear, but it was one time when we ran out of propane in the house. And it was my first time living in New Hampshire where you have to order propane, and we were out of propane for like 3 days and it was cold and I didn't know how we were going to get through it. And I was so upset. And I remember crying and I was like, I can't believe I let this happen. And I was going through the emotions. And then, my daughter made me realize something really key. She was like, let's build a fort. Let's make lots of blankets and let's build a fort. And I was like, ooh, that's a good idea. I was like, let's get warm together in the blanket fort. So we started building the fort together and it was so much fun. But in that moment, not only I didn't forget, but it was just a moment of, okay, focusing on it is not going to do anything.
Right.
I just have to wait and be patient. My tears aren't going to solve anything.
Right.
So,
pivoting away from, say, the challenge into the solution.
Yeah, exactly. And so just kind of finding that silver lining, because it allowed us to connect a little bit more during those 3 days and build something together and look at a tough situation into something that had a silver lining in it. It allowed us to connect.
And I think part of what you're saying, what really resonates with me is because 90% of the time in caregiving, I mean, this is stress.
Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. And there's times as an adult where I'm like, how did parents, grandparents, how do people handle this?
How did they go through it back in the day? I always question myself
because I look at, I'm like, where are the breaks? Where are the breaks? There aren't. It's just a series. So if you look kind of at the curve of that earth, it's too much.
Yeah.
But if you look kind of one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. And sometimes that takes actually sitting down and looking at your life and your schedule and what you want to mirror for your kids, because how you live your life on the daily is how they see you. Yeah. And so mirroring some of bringing in those breaks, even if they're small, 10, 15 minutes, it shows them that when things are really tough or stressful, that they're allowed to take a break and that it's going to be okay, that they can go back to that problem and find that solution, but they can still incorporate those breaks in the day.
We just had a quick 1-day staff retreat where, again, programmed break to get to essentially a place where we could consider the way we approach problems and how we come together or not, because, problem does create issues in communication and whatnot.
Right.
And one of the things that I walked away with was I'm not very good at goal setting, right? Because I don't really view my life as having these markers which make it good or bad.
Right.
I'm a journey guy, not an endpoint guy, but not having a goal does not allow you to have some sort of mechanism to make it better, something to hold you accountable. So even with this ride for resilience,
consistency, right? That learning, you have to learn how to build consistency into your life.
Exactly.
And, you know, I know that some of the stops are family resource centers.
Right.
And family resource centers are such key points for many families who can't take breaks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who don't have that privilege of incorporating that 15, 20-minute break. Sometimes those family resource centers allow that to happen and show people that they can do different things in their lives to build that resiliency.
It was almost as if I scripted that segue. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, Ardis Yahna from Children Unlimited and Gabrielle Flanders from the Family Resource Center serving New Hampshire's North Country join us. Don't go anywhere. Today's show was brought to you by Bank of New Hampshire. For 193 years, Bank of New Hampshire has put customers and communities first. With the expertise to help you realize your goals, their technology makes banking easier, and the friendly faces will make you want to visit in person. Want a bank that has your back? Bank of New Hampshire are your people. For more information, visit bnh.bank or call 1-800-832-0912. Member FDIC. Today's podcast was brought to you by Dartmouth Health Children's. As the only comprehensive pediatric healthcare system in the region, Dartmouth Health Children's promotes health, advances knowledge, and delivers the best patient and family-centered care for infants, children, and adolescents. Shared knowledge from expert providers across the system increases their ability to care for patients and families close to home. From annual checkups to specialized treatments, Dartmouth Health Children's is dedicated to ensuring all children live their happiest, healthiest lives. For more information, visit childrensdartmouthhealth.org. That's childrens.dartmouth-health.org. Today's show was also brought to you by NFI North. For more than 40 years, NFI North has served as an indispensable nonprofit resource for delivering mental and behavioral healthcare services to children, adults, seniors, and families across Maine and New Hampshire. To learn more, visit nfinorth.com. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Today in the show, we're joined by Gabrielle Flanders, Program Director at the FRC, serving New Hampshire's North Country, and Ardis Yahna, ED of Children Unlimited in Conway. Thank you both for coming on the show.
Sure, no problem, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here.
Now, I'm excited because September 13th, we're going to be doing the Ride for Resilience, starting in Conway, going up through it feels like many notches, but I'm so curious because this entire ride is about the idea of resilience. So I just wanted to ask, what does resilience mean to you personally? And what does it mean to you as an organization?
Yeah, so I would say resilience is really that feeling within you that you can overcome whatever challenge or difficult time personally or at work. And I think it really starts with you having that confidence, that those relationships that help you to be able to know that you can do this.
Yeah.
I think to me, resilience is all about like adaptability and strength. It could be in hard times. It could be even in the good times. Whenever we're facing a challenge, it's about how are we bouncing back? What does that look like in those strengths and those steps? And also about acknowledging those difficulties and being able to walk through them.
Right.
If I'm thinking about them on an organizational level, it's who do we have when we go through those difficult times? Creating a supportive environment, that also empowers our staff, our families that we work with, and our community as well. And then creating like a continuous learning environment as well during all of that.
Now, I am fascinated by this concept. And I was talking to Jasmine on the first half of this show. I think what makes me passionate is the idea of how we build resilience as people. And so if you wouldn't mind entertaining this, because I know it's deeply personal, but when you look back on your life and the things that you've been through, what are those, do you think, indicators of resilience? And how the heck did you arrive at having them?
Oh, that's such a good question. And I think it's okay to go into that personal. I think for me, how I built resilience was all of those people around me, like those safe, supportive people. Like I always go into like those 5 people that I was able to trust and build those connections with, were able to, whenever I was having a place where maybe I didn't feel safe, but I had those 5 people to build those layers on. So if I were to ever go back into like my past or my history, I know that my parents, I could always count on them, or I had those teachers that I could run to whenever there was a moment where perhaps I didn't feel, I wanted to be able to talk to them about it. And those along the lines, they're creating those protective factors. They're strengthening my relationships.
So you name 5, right? Which is a multitude. It's not just one person. It's not 2. Why do you think that having a spread of connections like that is helpful when building resilience?
For me, I feel like it starts with acknowledging that you can't get through things always just by yourself, right. That you have to rely on relationships with other people. I see that a lot here at work. We work really hard to create and maintain these relationships with each other in the workplace.
Right.
So that when you get that email that just feels very overwhelming, you can talk to people and they can help you get perspective on a situation and know too that you can get through this.
Yeah. So it's interesting. We're doing this 8-week training right now on trauma-informed care across our agency right now. And we're really learning about the importance of having this network of connections. And that starts as early as birth. And that network of connections can always change. But the 5 people that you spend the most time with really helps develop who you are as a person. And you should always be able to rely on those 5 people, but they shape you into who you are. Your personality, your stabilization, and how you adapt in hard times of life.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I think about it, I don't exist in a silo in one environment. I exist in, growing up, the school environment, a home environment, a friendship environment. So how then does an organization like yours go about building for community resilience?
Yeah, no, such a great question. So for our agency alone, I'll speak just for our Family Resource Center of the North Country. We've been around for 27 years, and it all starts with trust. So we really need to build those relationships and strengthen those relationships in the community. So one, any sort of family, any sort of community existence can trust us. In order for them to work with us, in order for them to feel safe, even inviting us into their home, they have to trust us. And then if they're accepting of our resources and understanding of us, again, the foundation of trust has to happen.
Yeah. So we have many programs here. Our Family Resource Center, right, that's involved with the Ride for Resilience. And within the Family Resource Center, we really listen to the community, listen to families and what they want and what they need. And in the last 2 years, we've really been more in the community. I would say traditionally people had come here for all the services. And now we're going to the library to hold events, to hold weekly play groups, to hold monthly support groups. So going out into the community is what families wanted.
When you see then resilience working for families, for individuals, for children, what does it look like in action?
I think we see more people engaging in the community. We see more people belonging, feeling a sense of going out there. I also notice that families that we're working with are more likely to volunteer. They're completing services. There's active participation, whereas before they might feel a little bit siloed. That itself is so much. So when families see us out there, out in the community, and then there's that reciprocal network of them going out, I think that goes such a long way.
Yeah, it does.
And families communicating with each other, spending time together. I would say my big one is hearing silly stories and laughter and where people are connected and helping each other out and feeling, I think watching families at our different community events or come in and out our doors and making connections with other families.
Yeah. Now, part of the reason why we're doing this ride is really to connect the dots of the network of family resource centers spread throughout the state while celebrating family strength. Why is it so important to celebrate something like family strength?
I don't always think we talk about it. I mean, obviously at the trust, it's talked about. Obviously, our Family Resource Center, it's talked about. But if I were to go out in the community, or if I was to go and ask a school, or even just a person on the street, it might feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It might even just be like this taboo where somebody is just like, I don't know. But if we look at parents, caregivers, anybody, and think about all the resilience that they go through, it is triumphant. It is huge. All the adversity, all of the really big moments in life that they're dealing with that people are just not talking about. And the strength of just being like, parenting is the hardest job in the world. You know, the day-to-day of showing up at your regular 9-to-5 job, I shouldn't even say 9-to-5, any job, but going home and being a parent, huge. And it takes a lot of work. And that is probably one of the biggest things that we need to make sure that we are praising and acknowledging.
What I'm hearing is just the incredible woven nature of what it means to raise a family. It's not one issue. They're all connected.
Yes, definitely. So Children Unlimited was founded in 1986, pre my time here. But and it was really an ask from the community to provide a childcare setting where children who were typically developing and children with special needs could come together and learn and grow and play, and families could, all be together. So we started with a childcare, and I would even say within that there was some family support that wasn't like defined as a family resource center,
right,
but supporting families and going into families' homes to support them with their children. So now we have a licensed childcare here, and we have babies from 6 weeks old up to 6 years old. Then within our childcare, we also work closely with the local school districts to support children with special needs. And that kind of goes into our outpatient clinic. So we have physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech therapists, and mental health providers, and an early childhood special educator who all can support the children here in our childcare, but also can give resources and support to the family support providers in our resource center and our clinic. So we have families bring their children from not our childcare.
Yeah. And I think what's so interesting, and part of the reason why we're all doing this work together, is an acknowledgement that from the higher level, you can build systems, structures, and community that make families stronger. There's things that we can do together in order to make that possible for families to build strength in a systematic way. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me. This was really fun.
And you too can help our riders celebrate family strength in the family resource centers that support caregivers on their parenting journey. Visit nhchildrenstrust.org/ride-4-resilience to learn about the 2024 route, the stops along the way, and the commitment that propels our riders on their 100-plus mile trek. And please consider supporting our riders by making a donation through the link at the bottom of the page. And many thanks to the Office of Social and Emotional Wellness, or OSEW, at the NH Department of Education for sponsoring this podcast. OSEW's mission is to advance youth social emotional wellness by collaborating with federal, state, community, and family partners to implement evidence-based, data-driven, preventative, and responsive approaches to lifelong social emotional skills for New Hampshire's students. To learn more about the Department of Education, visit www.education.nh.gov. Merrimack County Savings Bank, where Merrimack style is treating everyone with care, respect, and compassion, proudly supports the mission and efforts of New Hampshire Children's Trust. Founded in 1867, the Merrimack has served people, businesses, nonprofits, and municipalities in central and southern New Hampshire for over 157 years. Visit local offices in Bow, Concord, Contoocook, Hooksett, Nashua, and Windham, or go to themerrimack.com.